Hello, hello. I'm Denise. Welcome to my channel. In this video, we'll continue our discussion of Married at First Sight, Season 12, the Where Are They Now episode. This is part 2, and I'm joined by my friend Shori from Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and please like, comment, and subscribe. Enjoy.
Discussing Brianna and Vincent because Brianna wanted to have them years down the track, but she seems to have changed her mind and maybe is ready to have kids sooner now.
She totally flipped. She was afraid of childbirth. She wanted children, and she was even willing to explore adoption. But she was deathly afraid of childbirth because she has high blood pressure.
Yes.
She was looking at the possible physical repercussions behind, labor and delivery, that sort of thing. But she totally switched because now she says she has baby fever and she wants to have a baby sooner rather than later.
I think it's a really good sign for her love for him because it shows she wants to have a baby sooner than she did, and she wants to have a baby with him. You could say, yeah, she's changed the tune, but it's a good sign for good reasons.
Good thing.
Yeah.
She's going in a positive direction because, like I said all along, if you will jump head first into marriage where you agree to marry a stranger and you agree to participate in an accelerated experiment where you're doing everything fast, you're doing everything more quickly than, a normal couple would under normal circumstances, then of course children would be in the equation and they would be coming sooner rather than later. Because if you're so gung-ho to get married, why wouldn't you be gung-ho to have your kids? I mean, who gets married right away to say, well, no, we want to have kids
in 5 years or
5 or 10 years from now? You could just keep on dating.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And get to know somebody and take it slow and figure out who you really want to be with if kids are that far down the road for you. But if you feel like, you know what, now's the time for me to settle down, now's the time for me to start my family, and that sort of thing, you do this experiment. So to me, the kids being part of the equation within a reasonable time frame just seems par for the course.
Yeah. Now,
it strikes me as strange that somebody would push kids down the road when you were so eager and gung-ho to get married.
Now, do you think
stranger.
that her health situation, the apparent blood pressure, not asking for a medical determination, but do you think she was sort of unnecessarily concerned about that? Because surely in the modern era, the doctors can manage blood pressure in modern hospitals, and she wasn't at risk of dying, was she, by having children?
Brianna never said her OBGYN told her that childbirth would put her in danger more so than anybody else. Okay, Brianna was just going on her emotion. She didn't come, like they say, with a doctor's excuse. Okay?
Yeah.
So all that stuff about she's got high blood pressure and she's scared to give birth. A lot of people, a lot of women are scared to give birth because, of course, you've not done it before.
Yeah.
So it's fear of the unknown. I think that is normal. But when you want to attach a medical condition to it, well, if your high blood pressure is such a big problem, then you should be living a lifestyle to manage that.
Yeah.
If you're so scared about its effects. I mean, blood pressure can kill you without a pregnancy. So, why would you look at that? And why would you hurry up and get married when you don't feel like you childbirth is something that you're afraid of? This is why I question the experts and their method for pairing couples, because why would you ever put someone who's afraid to give birth with a man who wants 3 or 4 children and he wants them now and he wants them to be his seed? He never even thought about adoption or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree. That was a big, either a big oversight or it sort of showed the experts didn't really care about that potential incompatibility with those two. It's a big thing.
And just like Derek and Virginia. What were the experts thinking? Because you can look at them with the children's situation and come up to the same.
Yeah, exactly right. she was worried. Oh, what if I can't have kids? And he was like, I want them now. It's a deal breaker, etc. Yeah, that they weren't compatible on paper.
Yeah, and she wants to sleep on people's sofas. See, that's the thing. She wants to sleep on her friend's sofa. She wants to, fall out drunk on the sofa, and instead of thinking, what do I need to do to get myself in line with my life partner's goals in life? See, I think that should have been discussed in the interviews and the questionnaires, and they should have been matched based on what they both want, that they have in common. Eric has been married before. So, of course, he wants to have a marriage that lasts, and he wants to have children. He wants to build his family. Virginia seems like she just wants to have a husband to say she's got one, but she wants to continue to go out partying and carrying on like she's still in a sorority or something. And it makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It really is strange that she wants to continue on this sort of random couch sleeping and couch surfing and hanging out with the guy friends. Why didn't she marry one of them if they're such good friends? It's strange the way Virginia thinks.
And drinking too much. But did you notice when her guy friends met Eric? Did you notice neither one of them brought up anything about, hey, Eric, when we go out and drink too much, sometimes we need to crash at a house. So can we crash here? And you, by the same extension, can crash at our house. Did you notice that the men never mentioned anything about crashing on it? Only Virginia talking about crashing on somebody's sofa. Nobody else talked about anybody getting drunk and needed to crash on somebody's sofa. That was Virginia making stuff up.
Yeah.
She was, because let me tell you something. Those guys have enough respect for themselves and enough respect for Eric to send Virginia's drunk behind home in a taxi, an Uber, a taxi, something. Because I tell you, none of those men are going to sacrifice their relationship for Virginia, because she said those guys are not gay. So if those guys have girlfriends, guess what? They would never tell their girlfriends, hey, look, I might go out, Virginia's with us, I might get drunk, fall out on Virginia's couch. I guarantee you, none of her male friends are doing that.
Yeah.
None. She will confront her husband with that type of nonsense. And, what if it's storming? What if it's raining? So it's a dark and stormy night. And she's creating, it's like Masterpiece Theater. She's creating all of these dramatic scenarios whereby she can't come home like a wife should come home.
Yeah, no, you're spot on.
When she went to the restaurant and she left him alone for, he said, like 40, 45 minutes or so, that is ridiculous. That shows she's not ready for marriage.
Yeah. She, throughout the experiment, I talk fast sometimes too, so I'm not going to criticize her for that, but it did seem she was always sort of nervous about the situation she was in, whether it was Eric trying to correct the dog's behaviour or Eric laying down some basic rules about this is what I expect, and she'd want to run out one time into the street and she sort of had a blow up about the dog and training the dog, it's my dog and all this, and she didn't want to stay in his condo. She was always looking for excuses as to why they weren't compatible or why it wasn't going to work or why they couldn't have a traditional marriage. She even said, we can make up marriage however we want it to be.
Right, exactly. Which her definition of marriage is really not marriage. Because if you need so much time hanging out and partying with your friends and you can't control your drinking and you don't want to sleep at home in your own bed and your husband is traveling half the time, and then when he's home, which is only half the time, you still want to hang out with your friends when your husband's home. You can't be at home when your husband's home, and then you stay out partying when he's gone. Yeah. That's ridiculous. Eric was having to negotiate for her time. she's not doing anything that is so earth-shattering and so important to where she can't be home.
That's right.
Her husband.
Exactly. She if she worked as a nurse or a doctor or a firefighter and she had to be on call or doing shift work, so she couldn't be there, yeah, that's fair enough. But her whole reason for wanting her free time or to be away from him was just so she could go drinking and hanging with the guys.
And the guy friends weren't that pressed to be out with her. It was her. So I'm not, what is this nonsense? And yes, she does have anxiety issues, which she needs to get professional help for. But here's the thing about that. If you have anxiety issues, and you know you have anxiety issues, why are you always throwing yourself at the bottom of a bottle? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
She climbs into every bottle she can get near.
Yeah,
and she finds her way to the very bottom of it. It's like if you have any type of emotional or mental problem, any type of imbalance, alcohol makes it worse.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the way the show was edited, the clips they chose to put in, or the way they chose to portray things, but they definitely, on Married at First Sight, portrayed Virginia as someone who drinks a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Haley drink a lot, we saw Clara drink a lot, but we saw Virginia drink a whole lot.
Yeah, I agree.
We saw the ladies pull it, we saw them knocking the drinks back quite a bit, but Virginia led the pack. And it's like, Virginia, come on now, if you have anxiety issues, why would you do the alcohol as much as you do?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even a doctor, and I know better than.
Exactly. I mean, she did seem like she had some sort of anxiety or sort of stress level that she needed to drink to maybe make her relaxed and additionally, like when people are 18 to 21, 22, maybe they're drinking a lot then, but she, I think, is 25, 26 now, and I would have thought she would have maybe slowed down the drinking and then realised, hey, I want to get married, and now she's on that next journey. But it's like she's still in the midst of being a heavy drinker, and as well as being on a show to get married, and instead of sort of straightening up, she expects the husband expects Eric to accommodate every random thing she wants to do, including sleeping on couches and that. It was strange. It was really strange. You know also the term oppositional defiance disorder. It's like a condition where people constantly want to oppose, take the opposite view, or just challenge authority, or cause unnecessary arguments. Well, this Virginia seemed to have that. She was constantly opposing things that Eric suggested or had.
Exactly, and all of her defiance is destructive to the marriage. It's not like she opposes him in ways that makes the marriage better, where she's trying to, lift him up to a higher level or show him a better way. All of her opposition it just works to the detriment of a marriage. You can define your marriage and create the dynamics of your marriage the way you want to, but you have to be in unison with your partner. Because if you have your own dynamic and your partner is not on board, guess what? You haven't redefined. You've just outlined your divorce. That's all you've done. So, Virginia, she wasn't ready as far as I'm concerned.
No.
And she wasn't paired with the right person, because Eric, I think, is a great guy. He's accomplished. He's very responsible. He has a clear idea of what he wants in life. He has a clear idea of what he views as a wholesome, healthy, productive marriage. He wants children. He wants to build his family. He's got a solid career. And as a matter of convenience for her, he's gone half the time.
Yeah.
So for him to be labored with Virginia, I think is unfair, because she's not mature enough, and she doesn't have that spirit of unity. where she wants to be with her husband and be supportive of her husband, and they just don't share the same view of marriage. So I don't know what the experts were looking at when they looked at Virginia's view of marriage and looked at Eric's view of marriage and figured, okay, these two match up or they're compatible. I don't see it at all.
No, exactly right. You make good points about the way Virginia would oppose with no sort of purpose or no productive sort of goal in sight. In fact, remember the amount of time she opposed moving into Eric's condo, and ultimately she did move in there anyway. So there was all this unnecessary arguing. And compare it to the way Brianna and Vincent handle things. When Brianna opposes or has a different view to Vincent, she always comes with a good reason, and she explains her reason respectfully to Vincent and says, look.
Exactly. And to your point, when Brianna and Vincent were looking at houses, they looked at a house that they both really, really liked. They both liked the features of the house. The price was right. However, for Brianna, the location of the house was a concern because it posed a 40-minute commute.
That's right, yeah.
For her into the city. And as an engineer, she has to go to work sites, and her work sites are in the city. So she has to be able to get to these work sites in a timely manner. So she was telling Vincent that, the only reason that they might not get that house, or the only reason that might not be a good idea to select that particular house, was because of its location, because of her job requirements. See, that is a reasonable explanation. That's not defiance. That's being reasonable. It's being logical, and it's being communicative.
Yeah.
I like this house as much as you like this house, Vincent. However, I have a commute.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the commute to my job is longer than I would like for it to be because I have to go to these work sites that are in the city.
Yeah.
So that's a reasonable, objection to getting that house. Whereas Virginia does not raise reasonable objections. It was a dark and stormy night. I drank too much. I need to stay on my male friend's sofa. Like, I can't catch an Uber. I can't catch a taxi. I have to sleep on this man's sofa because I can't control my drinking. Knowing that I'm a married woman, knowing that I have a husband, and my husband is supposed to just be okay with it, unlike every other husband on the planet who has a working, functioning brain. And it makes Eric, dealing with Virginia, makes Eric he's a little off kilter too sometimes in having to deal with her, because in the episode, the Where Are We Now episode, Where Are They Now? Eric talked about how he and Virginia have disagreements. They went out axe throwing with a couple of other couples.
That's right, yeah.
There were 3 couples, and they all went out axe throwing. They did this axe throwing activity, and one of Virginia's friends was telling Eric, don't try to change Virginia. Whatever you do in the marriage, don't try to change her because that won't work. And Eric, to his credit, said, I'm not trying to change her. I love Virginia as she is. It's just that we disagree on some things. And he mentioned things like housekeeping. They disagree on housekeeping. But one thing Eric said in his confessional was that Virginia's dog was a problem. Virginia's dog, Rocky, was putting a strain on their marriage. And that is where I must respectfully beg to differ with Mr. Eric. Virginia's dog, Rocky, is not putting a strain on their marriage. Their incompatibility is putting a strain on their marriage. Virginia and Eric are not compatible. They were not a good match. They don't share the same views. They don't have the same common, they don't have the same core values.
No, exactly right.
From what I can see.
Yeah.
And that is what is putting a strain on their marriage. But hey, blame the dog, because that's the easy thing to do. Instead of looking at, hey, What are our personality traits? What are our characteristics? What are our, core values? What are our belief systems? Instead of looking at those things and being realistic, which they should have done during the experiment. That's what I really regret about Virginia and Eric. During the experiment, they had time to take inventory of what is really, truly important to them and line those things up. And if they didn't match up, you're at a critical point where you gotta make a decision. Either you do like Rihanna and Vincent, and you align yourselves to get together, to come together, or you just realize, hey, you know what? We are two very, very different people with two very, very different outlooks. And it's not that you're a bad person. It's not that I'm a bad person, but we're a bad match.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And you make a good point about taking inventory, because that's something that Virginia seems to never do, to have never done. And when someone tries to lead her into a sort of path of reflecting, or let's look at this problem and let's try and sort it out in a calm and sort of thoughtful way, she still doesn't handle it. And with the condo, he already owned the condo, so it was common sense that they should move in there temporarily, 3-6 months until they find a place. But she wouldn't have it. She was against that.
It was ridiculous because he can't control the market.
That's right.
You don't have control over how fast or how slow your property sells. You sell it when you can sell it.
Yeah.
So you can't just hurry up and go out and buy something and then be stuck with 2 mortgages because Virginia, who's renting an apartment, who doesn't own anything, is just saying, oh, okay, we need this and we need that. She's unrealistic.
Yeah.
That's a lack of maturity.
Very, very
unrealistic.
unrealistic.
Because of her lack of maturity and her lack of experience in life, Eric was trying to explain these things, and people were faulting Eric, saying that he was acting like he was her father. No, he was acting like a man with experience. He was being grounded where she was being flighty. She wanted to fly by the seat of her pants. And this man has too much experience in life to act so recklessly and thoughtlessly. So he was explaining to her the right way to go about doing things. See, it was easy for her to sit back and say, well, just do it, because she's renting an apartment.
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy that she had, she couldn't see how it was the logical and reasonable option. And yeah, maybe it's not ideal for a dog to be in a condo, but there's parks they can take the dog out for a walk, and it might only be for 3 months, 6 months, Why get so opposed to moving into his place?
The dog, it's not dog friendly. Well, you know what? Do you want to be a wife or do you want to be a dog owner? Which one is more important? See, sometimes you have to prioritize. You want to, and your home is like Noah's Ark now all of a sudden. You got all these animals all over the place. It's ridiculous. So it's like, and you know what? You think about the couple being married, you think about having kids, and you got all these animals all over the place, this blended family of animals. Some of those animals may or may not get along with your children.
Exactly right. And imagine when if they have a kid or 2 kids and then they have different parenting styles. That's going to be more problems from Virginia, because she can't even seem to see common sense when it comes to let's move into his apartment or let's sort of get the dog to calm down a bit, or and so when they have different approaches to correcting maybe a child's bad behaviour or where to send a kid to school, there's going to be constantly issues and problems and conflict between those two, I think.
Okay, well, that's the dogs are proof of that.
That's right, yeah.
The dogs are foreshadowing exactly the predicament you described. The dogs are foreshadowing it because Eric just wants some order. That's all he wants, and that is not an unreasonable expectation to have order in your home. But see, Virginia, it's like, oh, well, he's a dog, and let him play, and you can definitely see her doing that with children. Oh, they're just kids. Don't be so mean. Let them run, and let them do this. And Eric is like, look, no, this is not the right place for that. There's a place and there's a time. you know, and he's right. And they, Eric and Virginia, did bring in a dog trainer in this episode.
That's right, yeah.
And the dog trainer noted that Rocky is very attentive. Rocky pays attention, so Rocky is looking for direction. He's looking for instruction. And when Virginia was asked to walk with Rocky, the dog trainer noted that Virginia was giving Rocky mixed signals. Rocky was paying attention, but it was Virginia who was the problem. So the dog trainer said Rocky is very trainable, very receptive, and he's ready to be trained. It was Virginia who lacked focus. She lacked direction. She wasn't paying attention, and she was giving the dog mixed signals. So as it turns out, Rocky doesn't need as much training as Virginia does. So that's what I learned, that Virginia is the one who needs the training more than Rocky does. So, and this is what Eric has to put up with. And you saw how Eric in the beginning, the very beginning, you saw how Eric was trying to keep up with Virginia, and he was drinking too much and getting drunk.
Yep.
On the honeymoon, you saw that, and he had to rein all of that in. So once he stopped, you know, partying and drinking and getting drunk, Virginia felt like he was a burden, and she didn't want to be around him very much anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Eric's achieved a lot. He's been in the military. He's a pilot, and he works as a pilot now. So I would have thought you'd think he'd meet, you know, air hostess, air stewards, women in that industry, and he'd be constantly meeting women who would be into him. You would think, you know, because he's got a lot of, you know, he's got the status of a pilot. He's got the income of a pilot. He's a likable guy, you know.
I think he was busy working, but he did have a marriage before. He was.
Yeah, that's right. He married someone before, but it sounded like that was almost a girlfriend that they decided to go to the next level so that she could either live on the base or that they could get those military spouse benefits or accommodations, you know. It almost sounded a bit risky admitting that the marriage wasn't, it sounded like his heart wasn't fully in the last one.
I've seen a picture of her, and I don't blame him for marrying her. She was gorgeous. Okay, she's gorgeous. I can see any man marrying her for whatever reason, to live here, to live there, to be on the base or whatever. Because, you know, when you're in the military, you do have to, you know, have your family intact. So, you know, the military is very family oriented, so they're not moving girlfriends and such, you know, onto the base and all of that. So, but, you know, they did actually have a marriage, you know, and so Eric has experience, and he knows what he's looking for. He knows what he wants, and he knows what doesn't work because he's been through it.
And do we
should be willing to benefit from his experience in terms of avoiding unnecessary mistakes.
Yeah. Well, without going too deep into it, do you recall or have you read anywhere why why Eric's first marriage didn't work out? Was it she left him, or did he leave her, or do we know what the backstory was as to why that didn't last? I forget.
From what I recall, and I don't recall specifics, but from what I can recall, Eric, of course, was more committed back then to his career, okay?
Oh, okay.
And it kept him from home. It kept him away from home even more back then.
Oh, right,
you
okay.
know, he hadn't reached the level that he is right now.
Oh, right. Okay, so too much travelling and it got in the way of the relationship, probably, yeah.
More training, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it took him from home more than it does now. He's only home, gone half the time. He's home half the time. So back then, he was gone more than he was at home. And from what I can recall, if I'm not mistaken, his wife, you know, got attention elsewhere because she was left to her own devices for a long period of time. So,
well, with regard to
that's what I recall.
Okay, thank you. With regard, you know, Claire is a air hostess, and she's going to be away about half the week as well, I think. You know?
Which I don't think Ryan would have a problem with in the least.
Yeah.
Okay? This is a man who, you know, received fellatio with no reciprocation. This is a man who refused to have sex. And this is a man who had to be forced to say he loves her. So Clara being gone for whatever amount of time she's gone, I think it's fine with Ryan, as long as, it's obvious to the world or apparent to the world that he has a wife and that he's married. Appearances. I think as long as Clara is around long enough to keep up appearances, I think that's fine.
Do you recall a while back they in the early part of getting to know each other, they discussed the option of the prospect of sending kids to church or not, and Ryan believed in that they should be the children. He would want his children to be sent to church, but Clara was more, I'm not sure, maybe let them decide when they get older or something like that. Now, do you think that would have maybe put something in his head that, gee, that's not what I'd planned, and maybe that put him off wanting to have kids with her immediately, and he's sort of pushing the whole issue off because of something like that?
He has asked Clara anything about long-term goals and aspirations. She has always disappointed Ryan along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay? When it comes to raising children, she wants the kids not to be raised in a religious household. She wants them to figure religion out on their own when they're old enough to do so. Whereas Ryan feels like it's very important for the children to have religious instruction growing up, because that will shape their morals and ethics, which he's right about that. I mean, it will shape, their morality and how they behave and why they do the things they do. And that's how he grew up. So he wants to pass that along to his children as a Christian, which is what a Christian does. So you're not going to negotiate a Christian out of raising their children in a Christian household. See, that's another reason I don't understand what the experts were thinking. I would never take a Christian and put them with someone who is not a Christian or doesn't support and uphold Christian values. Like, there are people who are not necessarily all into the church, but if they marry someone who is in the church, guess what they do? They go to church. Yeah. Because they love that person enough to support that person. Yeah. And they don't have any, strong misgivings about the church. Whereas Clara, having grown up in a religious household, does have some misgivings about the church. So she shouldn't have been paired with somebody who's a Christian. Yeah. And who takes their faith seriously, who actively, is involved in their religion, because it doesn't match up with her lifestyle. Yeah, no, and in fact, Ryan's parents, I believe, are both pastors. His mother and father, we met them in the early episodes, and they are both pastors. So it's not just his belief; it's like his family tradition, his parents' expectation, like the grandparents of the child's expectation. There's a lot of pressure and expectation and tradition for that. Lifestyle that governs and dictates the whole way they live. Yeah, and if they actually have a church, I'm not sure if it's in Atlanta or not, but if the parents have their own church, then they're going to expect to send the kids attend their church, right? He's going to attend their church, even if it's not in the same city. He's got to support, because that's what family members do. Yeah. So, so it's a big thing. Look, his parents don't want their grandchildren to be brought up like heathens, and that's what they would consider it to be. That's what they would consider a non-religious household to be. Yeah. And they don't want that. Yeah. I think the experts should have thought a bit more about the compatibility of that.
Thanks for tuning in to our discussion of Married at First Sight. Where are they now? This was the second episode. Please be sure to watch part 3 for our continued discussion where we wrap things up. And don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.